already know by now, but just for anybody that's watching from home, obviously, Sergeant, this is a non-traditional approach than what we've seen in the past when it comes to promoting or hiring new candidates into the police department. And this is just our ongoing effort here, just to maintain transparency, but more importantly to me, so that the public gets to see and know who the candidates are coming into the police department, or in this case, promoting into positions of leadership in the city. And I think, it helps with, it'll help hopefully in the long term, continue to build that community trust. Not to say that the public doesn't trust our police department. I think our local police department is widely supported in the city of Holyoke. But, obviously we want to always do what we can to try new approaches when possible, so that we can just be a little better when it comes to local government services. So in this process specifically, you have myself, the mayor, the chief. We have also online observing this time around is our new personnel director, who couldn't make it here with us, but she's there observing through the Kelly Curran. Yep, she's there with us somewhere. I think she's on as an attendee rather than a panel. Oh,
yep, I'm here. No, you can hear me. Hi.
Excellent. And so, as you already know, the mayor through our charter is the chief appointing officer to any officer or any person being promoted in the police department. So I do the appointment, but the process is dictated by civil service in the order of that list. We're going to ask you a series of questions. We'll go back and forth. We're rating them accordingly. The rate really doesn't tell us one way or another if we're going to bypass a candidate and how well you answer the questions, but it's a good conversational piece because I'm rating individually, Chief is rating individually, and if you don't know who these two ladies are, these are members that are in our police relations advisory group. I'm hoping in the future they can join me on this side doing interviews, when we do these in the future. But they're doing ratings too. So it's a good conversational piece to pick up on certain characteristics or how you answer the question or what, but it doesn't necessarily impact a bypass or whatever the case may be. But with that being said, we'll dive right in. Before we do you have any questions for us on any of that or?
No questions, just thank you for actually having this process. I've actually always thought that promotions should be just more than the score, especially in my profession. So I understand how civil service works. There are benefits to civil service, but my own personal opinion, based on my career experience, is that I think more should be taken into account. But that being said, we accept what we got. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's although new to this process for police.
Mayor Garcia, I don't think his mic is on. I can't hear him.
Maybe it wasn't. Sorry. I mean, it looked green, maybe from the lighting.
Oh, there it goes. Yep. Now I hear him. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So I was just gonna. So although new to the process for how we promote in the police department, not new entirely to the city, because at the fire department, the fire commission is the appointing authority, and all of their interviews, whether if it's a promotion or a new hire, are all done in open public meetings. Because it's a 3-member fire commission board, they have to follow open meeting laws. So I'm trying to replicate that model to the best possible, to at least at minimum allow folks to, because there's not, we want to de-escalate any potential for, people to think that politics is involved or, the deal is made because of who you knew or whatever nepotism might be. I want to curb that as much as possible and try to build some integrity here. Not to say that there wasn't any integrity before, it's just public perception, right? It's like, so, all right, well, here's what we're trying to do different to curb that public perception.
Appreciate it very much.
So the first question here is, tell us about yourself, Sergeant, and what are your long-term career goals? Why are you interested in the promotion at the Holyoke Police Department?
Okay, let's see. I was born in Colombia, South America. 46 years ago. When I was 9 years old, unfortunately, my father passed away. So I was basically raised by a single Latino mother, very strong woman that she is. Based on our culture, as you all probably know, the Latinos, the male is very dominant, and the figure of the home, he was the provider. So my mother was a stay-at-home person. Once he passed away, we were kind of left in limbo. My grandmother had migrated here in the 70s, like many of the people in the city of Holyoke. We have your Polish, your Irish, Colombians, Puerto Ricans. They all migrated here. So she was here. She called my mother and said, "You know what? Why don't you guys come over here? I'll help you out, and you can start a new life." So sure enough, 1986, my mother, my brother, and I, we all packed up a bag each, got on a plane, flew from Colombia to the United States, new country. We all spoke Spanish. None of us spoke English. So we just started a life in a new country. From there, I went on to the Holyoke Public Schools. Grew up in the Flats, so I went to Kelly School. From there, I moved on to Lynch School, and then Holyoke High School. So I got my education, or at least part of my education, here in the city of Holyoke. From that point on, once I graduated high school, I was like many people, many of the young Hispanics in the community, that I didn't really have a path. I had desires of what I wanted to do and thoughts of what I thought I wanted to do, but no clear direction. Mm-hmm. So my mother, she's very school oriented. So she push, go to school, do what you, just go to school. Started Holyoke Community College just to get my associate's degree in just liberal arts, just the basic. I went ahead and I got there. Been working throughout my whole youth. Started working out when I was 14, so I was going to school, working, going to school, working. Still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Living in single mother and 2 siblings, it was tough for her, so I decided that I needed help trying to figure out what I was going to do or pay for school. I decided to join the military on a part-time basis. I joined the National Guard just to help with the Quinn bill and take that money and help me pay for school, to take that burden off of her. I did that for 6 years. I have mixed emotions regarding the military. I think it's great for people who don't have a direction in life. Teaches you responsibility, teaches you discipline. I unfortunately had some bad experiences, promises that recruiter made that were never fulfilled. And next thing you know, I said, you know what, let me do my time. I signed up for, as a reserve, you sign up for 8 years, you do 6, and then the last 2 years you kind of are inactive. They'll call you if they need you. So I fulfilled my contract, I did my time. I was honorably discharged from the Massachusetts National Guard. From then on, I always wanted to be a police officer based on experience that I had in Colombia as youth. But as you mentioned, things were very different back in the 70s, 80s, early 2000s. Political push did have something to do with appointments, so I didn't know anybody. Therefore, I didn't think I had an opportunity to become a police officer. I continued on until I was before I get to that, I was very fortunate. At the age of 21, very young age, I was blessed. You would think at that young age, but I was blessed to be the father of boy and girl twins.
Oh,
exactly.
Welcome
I
to
knew
the
you
club.
would. I knew you
Well,
would
I'm in your
appreciate
club,
that.
right?
I knew you would appreciate that. Yes, sir. Boy and girl twins. They are my joy. They're my reason for everything that I do. They're my motivation. I remember when I got promoted to sergeant they're the ones who pinned the badge on me. So, love them very much. So, go on until I was about 24. I kind of gave myself the age of 25 to seek a path, which way I was going to go. I wanted policing, but at the other side, I had to do something else to provide for my family. During that time, I used to work full-time for one of our local restaurants. I'm not going to say names, 'cause I don't want to. But anyway, it was a mom-and-pop Italian restaurant. I mean, the kind where, grandma was in the back kitchen making the meatballs, that type of thing, and the family ran it. That being said, and a very specific point about this is that they only had the family running that business. I started right after high school with them as a part-time job while going to school. And by the time I finished there 10 years later, I was the only non-family member that they actually gave the keys to the restaurant and gave me the responsibility to open, close, and manage the restaurant. So at that age of 24, I was either gonna own that restaurant. They were actually selling it. They made the offer for me to go and take over that restaurant or go into policing. God decided for me. I became an auxiliary police officer, volunteered some time. After that, I saw a posting, and I became a civilian dispatcher. I did that for a short period of time, about a year full-time. Once that passed, I got hired as a reserve officer, and very shortly thereafter, I was very fortunate to score a 99 on my police exam, so therefore, I didn't have to sit on that list very long because I was high up on that list. So I think I only spent like 6 months as a reserve officer while working as a full-time dispatcher, and then I was hired as a full-time officer. That took me, the patrol officer took me for about 10 to 11 years that I spent on patrol. I did a lot of things there. I was on the bike patrol, which I love. I love fitness, and I love being out there. You're not cooped up in a car. You're out there, you're hearing things, you're seeing things. The little kids love the cops on the bikes. Even till this day, I carry stickers in my pockets, and whenever I go somewhere, I give them to the kids. From then on, I was very fortunate. I think it was 12 years in, the last chief, no, not the last chief, Naiswanger, came in and gave me an opportunity to go into the detective bureau. I was in the detective bureau for 4 years. During that time in the detective bureau, a lot of my duties were investigative. Aside from being promoted, I see that as the best time in my 20 years as a police officer. I got to really connect with the people of Holyoke on one-on-one as victims, seeing them as persons, as individuals, how they were affected by the events that were happening. 3 out of those 4 years, I was made the head of our domestic violence unit. So I'll be honest, that was not a role that I chose. I was basically told, because I was Latino, I spoke Spanish, the majority of our community is Spanish speaking, you're doing domestic violence. I'm like, okay. I wasn't too happy about it at the time, nothing against it, but it was the best time that I had, the most fulfilling and how can I say, rewarding time that I had thus far, being able to see the progression from a victim that comes to the Holyoke police, worn down, beat down, thin, disheveled, hopeless. We do our job as police officers. At the time I did my job, furthermore, as an investigator and liaison towards, with the courts. And I remember one particular time where I saw a victim come at the sentencing for the perpetrator, and I did not even recognize her. She looked so good. She was back to being healthy, support from the family. So that really gave meaning to the job, you know what I mean? You actually connected with the victims. That really gave meaning to the job. So that was about 4 years that I did that. And then I took the promotional exam. I always had an interesting, progressing in the field. I got promoted to sergeant, and I've been a sergeant for about 6 years. I've worked in every single shift as a supervisor, and while that may not mean a lot to much, that is actually a lot, because each shift has their own separate issues, their own separate problems, their own separate personalities, separate crimes. Different crimes happen at the overnight that they do on the 4 to 12. On the day shift where I am now, it's more administrative. You have all the bosses hanging around, and you gotta be on top of things because they're lurking around, and you gotta be on top of things. But no, so each shift has different challenges. So that's been a great learning lesson there. I've always taken on challenges. Recently, through the changes in the world and policing and such, the chief has made great efforts, and we started a special police force. Members of the community, if they don't know this is some retirees are coming back, and some officers, part-time officers, are coming in to help supplement our police force. And I volunteered I was asked, but I could have declined. I volunteered to take on the role of overseeing these 20 reserve or special police officers that we are taking on. So it's about pretty much a little bit about myself. I think it was good, 10, 15 minutes.
No, that was great.
As far as career goes, where I want to head, like anything, I want to keep on progressing. I'm not, some might see this as not being, ambitious, but I feel that in each role that you take, you need to take the time to learn that role. You might not want to progress so quickly. Take time to reach that step, look around, learn from it, learn your experiences, then move on to the next step. I've been a sergeant for 6 years. I think I'm probably going to be the most senior sergeant that you're going to interview, heading to a lieutenant. And then from then on, hopefully in the near future, or so, I'll make it to the rank of lieutenant. I'll spend some time there. I'll learn the job, progress from there, captain, whatever goes from there. Just keep on progressing.
Thank you.
Is the next one me?
That's how we get it.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you wanted. Are you okay with?
I'm fine with talking, yeah.
Okay.
So can you share with us why you believe you'll be a good lieutenant?
Okay. Well, I think I went deep into my time as a police officer, my experience in the police department, in each role that I had throughout the 20 years that I've been here. And I think I bring to the role of a lieutenant experience, not just that theory, but the actual practice of policing. It's very easy to read books and immerse yourself in books and theory and how to learn or read how to be a police officer, but it's very different when you have been there and you've actually done the job. 10 years, 12 years as a patrol officer, very proactive at the time. 4 years as a detective, that's huge when it comes to promotion levels. I personally, like we were talking, we all have our own different opinions. I'm of the opinion that a police officer should spend some time, whether it be 1 or 2 years. I was fortunate to be there for 4, in a detective role prior to get promoted, because there's a lot of things that you learn that are beneficial to you as a supervisor, that you learn while you're a detective. So I bring that extra experience to the job of being a lieutenant, a supervisor. Besides that, I mean, hardworking. I continue to strive for more. I continue to want to keep going further. And I think this is the next step. I think I've been a sergeant for a long time. I've learned from it, and I'm ready to move on to the next step.
Okay, I'm up, George. Here we go.
Chief.
Tell me what you believe is the most important trait or characteristic of a good supervisor and why.
I don't think there is one particular trait. You have to be well-rounded to be an effective supervisor. From my own personal opinion and the way that I am, discipline. Discipline is crucial as a supervisor. You need to lead by example. You can't be that do as I say, not as I do type of guy. You need to lead. You got to show what it is that you want people to do by being an example of what do you expect from people. Patience, especially in our profession. I've learned that patience is key. We sometimes dive into things and we don't take the time to look at the big picture and sometimes we make assumptions or decisions that they're hurried and they're not in the best interest of anybody. So patience is key. Consistency, you need to be consistent. Behave the same way towards everybody, towards your subordinates, towards the public. So, I mean, there's more, but I think those are some of the top ones.
Good.
In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges facing the Holyoke Police Department? How do you think you can help make it better?
I think you're gonna hear the same answer from a lot of the candidates when it comes to this. Right now, the policing is viewed very negatively. Very bad opinion of the police based on the past couple of years. And that has brought some challenges. People no longer want to be police officers, which is a real shame. It's a profession that's very rewarding, and people don't realize that the negative impact, the negative perception that the world seems to be having nationwide, citywide, statewide, is really hampering the law enforcement community and the law enforcement profession. But one thing that I see specifically in our department, and it's very important to address, is the morale and the mental well-being of our police officers. Law enforcement is meant to be a very thankless job. I can tell you that no police officer comes into the job looking to be pat in the back and be told thank you every single day. We just come here because we want to do the job. But the negative perception that has become the norm, unfortunately, through society, is really putting a toll on the mental well-being of our police officers. Add to that the fact that our manpower is down. Therefore, our police officers are having to work extra hours, long hours, sometimes going to the station, working for 16 hours in a row, going home and waking up, do it all over again. Resources, funding, that's huge. I understand that we are a city, and I understand that policing is not the only thing in the city that you, sir, need to take care of. And I want to thank you because you have done a great job supporting the police thus far. But I think, we need additional funding. We need police officers. We need resources. We need things out there to be able to do our job, which the guys would appreciate that. We also need the support of the public. We're not being looked at as human beings. And I think one of the things that we as supervisors and as leaders, we need to turn around and humanize the role of a police officer. Once again, we need to make people understand that police officers are not just a person dressed in a uniform riding a black and white car. These are human beings. They come in, they do their job. A lot of things happen on the job that affects them mentally, psychologically. And they go home, they have families, their parents, their brothers, their sisters, they're human beings. So I think that we need to do a lot more to thank the police, even though we don't want to be thanked. But I think in order to turn things back around and get that interest back from the public to want to be a police officer, we need to kind of raise the profession of law enforcement back to a different level, a higher level.
Kelly, you're up.
Great. How would you think other officers at the Holyoke Police Department would describe you?
Depends on who you ask, man. No.
I know they're all at the station watching right now.
I know, exactly. I'll be very honest, and I think it's because of my experiences both as a patrolman, as a supervisor, and in life. I am very strict. I know that. I am very strict. I'm very stern, and I'm by the book. I'm one of these like by the book kind of guys. And I know that oftentimes that can be viewed as being the mean sergeant, you know what I mean? But in essence, because of policing nowadays, because of the scrutiny that policing is under right now, I think it's important that we have a higher level of discipline than we might have kept in the past. We need to be better, bigger than what we used to. I know that I am approachable. I know that because of officers coming to me with problems, comments being made, that I'm an asset to the department when the time is needed. I'm dependable. I've also been told that, in a situation where there's a crisis or there's a heavy incident, shooting, or whatever it may be, because of my experience in the detective bureau and such, a lot of officers have said, I'd rather have you here than whoever. So that's great to hear on my part. So I think that would be a few of the things that would be said about me. Very difficult to kind of talk about yourself and not sound
It's hard.
arrogant.
Yeah, it's really hard.
But
believe me.
I mean, we're here for you to learn who we are. We're here for the public to learn who we are. So as uncomfortable as it may be, I think the people need to realize that the Holyoke Police Department is filled with great, compassionate, loving, and professional men and women. So like we said earlier, this is huge that we're taking these steps to show the city that we have a great police department.
Great. Okay, can you give an example of when you are dealing with a difficult situation, a specific situation, and how you handled it? Late November, early December, we had an incident, a road rage incident, where a city resident ended up having to be arrested.
suspicion of alcohol and such. But from the get-go, on this particular day, I had two of our special officers working. One of the special officers was assigned to our house duty, our house officer, our booking officer. He was paired up with a full-time officer. And the second officer, I had him out on the street with one of my senior officers who I trust and has, demonstrated that he's level-headed and, he's not gonna get himself into a situation. So they responded to this incident, and right from the get-go, the subject in question was very belligerent, confrontational, and assaultive towards the police. They had to take the necessary means to take this person into custody. It was a chaotic scene. I wasn't on scene. I was actually inside as the commanding officer on that particular day. But it was a very chaotic scene. On the scene, I learned. And the subject was ultimately brought to the station. Well, come to find out, once the subject gets transported to the station, he's at the Sally Port. I'm out there in the booking area as the booking sergeant, just part of my duties as the commanding officer. I had my special officer with the full-time officer and these two other officers that came in. They opened the door to the cruiser, and as soon as they opened that door, the first thing that they noticed was a gun sitting on the floor of the car, right where the gentleman was sitting. I spoke to the officers. I'll get to that part later. I spoke to the officers. They noticed that it was a very short trip from where the incident happened to the station, but they did notice, the person was kind of squirming around. To no fault of the police officers, this has happened here. This has happened in many other cities. It is what it is. It's part of the job. They opened that door, and they found that gun right then and there. I can tell you that the two police officers, the senior officer and the brand new specialist, were both at awe. There was very mixed emotions coming from both. They were angry at themselves, taking that blame on the fact that, did we do something wrong? Should I have searched them better? Should I have done something better? It's natural to have that emotion. That fear of, oh my God, what if this person was able to get that gun and use it towards us? So the emotions were happening going there. We bring the subject into the booking area. He's non-compliant, belligerent, combative, to the point where we were not able to book him right then and there. We did what we had to do as far as inventory his property, search to make sure they had no other weapons. And then we had to place him in a cell to let him kind of cool off a little bit. Family called. I ended up learning from the family that this subject had recently had deaths in his family. His brother, I believe, had passed away, and I believe a parent had also passed away. He was distraught, emotional, because of the family. Took his emotions and tried to drown them in alcohol. One thing led to another. Some people are happy drunks, some people are violent drunks. Whatever it was, that was not an excuse for the way he behaved, but it was a mitigating factor. It was a reason to understand why he was behaving the way he was. Once I learned that from the family, I went back to the cell. Him being Latino, me being Latino, I started speaking to him in Spanish. I said, listen, I spoke to your family. I spoke to your sister. She explained to me how passed away. I'm sorry. I understand what you're going through. But now that you're here, we have to get this process done. I have to say that he understood. Actually, he started crying, seeing a grown man cry. But we were able to get that booking process done, and the interaction afterwards was nothing but friendly. There was a mutual understanding, and that's where, if you remember me talking about being patient, or having patience is huge in being a police officer. Having the patience of taking the time to learn why people do the things that they do. Once that happened, put him aside. I actually brought in all the 4 officers into my office afterwards. I had a conversation with them. I explained to them that they did nothing wrong. You know what I mean? They did their job. They did nothing wrong. To that senior officer, even afterwards, I sent everybody away, and I spoke to him, and I said, listen, I understand that, you know, you were the senior guy on scene. You can't take this to heart. You can't, you know, take that responsibility and let it kind of get to you. You know, I could see it in his eyes that it bothered him. So I felt that I had a responsibility to him as a supervisor to explain to him and let him know that he was okay. He did okay. He was fine. So I counseled them. I'll use the word counsel in the sense that I spoke to them, all of them. It was a great learning lesson for the new special officers. They're like, I think there was something, for one of them was like, I think for the one inside, it was maybe his first shift. They saw the reality of what law enforcement was. They saw the reality of what policing is. They saw what the public and what the general population doesn't understand and doesn't see what the job of police officer entails. So I thought that was a great learning lesson for them, a great learning lesson even for the senior officer, and even a great learning lesson for me because I had to not only address the issue in hand, but I had to address the emotional impact that this incident had on the actual police officers. So,
Thanks for sharing.
thank you.
Wow.
That's a lot in one question.
I mean, there's multiple things you can, that
Am I done? Can I go?
three
Absolutely.
big lessons on there
Yeah.
for everybody.
Good answer, George.
Whose turn is it? My turn?
Yes, it is.
Everyone makes mistakes. How do you generally handle things when, upon reflection or when something is pointed out to you, you realize you presented incorrect information or did not handle yourself as effectively as you could have?
So, I'll be very candid with you. Obviously, these questions were not a surprise to me. As my years as a detective put it, I did some research, so I kind of went on from there. And I actually had not trouble with the question, but I had reflection on it. And very easily, you can completely answer with, "I'll just apologize." That is a very simple answer. But it's incumbent of us as supervisors to lead, as I said, by example, and to take the responsibility and to take the ego away and be able to say, "I'm sorry, I did wrong. I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong information. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said." We need to, if we're going to expect our officers to behave in a certain way, we need to be able to learn from them. We need to be able to accept judgment. We need to be able to accept correction and learn from it, learn from the mistakes that we have made.
Go ahead, Kelly.
What would you consider to be your strongest personal asset? Also, can you please share with us what has been your biggest professional accomplishment?
I think one of my strongest professional asset is my compassion. I had a very quickly. I know that we're on a timetable here, but I had a very important incident early on in my career that pretty much dictated the path that I took as a police officer. I'll get real quickly on it. I was working, I think it was either my first year or second year as a police officer. I was working a detail at Stop and Shop. And this young lady, couldn't be more than 11 or 12 years old, was in there stealing. I got called into the security officer's office, and here's the security officer, loss prevention officer, and with the items that she stole. So I look at the items that she stole, and she had a pack of ham, a jar of mayonnaise, a loaf of bread, and a pack of pre-wrapped cheese. So, growing up poor, realizing, taking that cultural diversity that I have, that knowledge of the community I live in, I said to myself, something's not right here. So I asked the young lady, I'm like, what's going on? Why are you stealing this? Usually a young girl at that age, she's stealing makeup, those type of things. She explained to me that she was taking those items because her and her sister at home were hungry. She was stealing to bring food to her sister. So I said, where's mom? She's home. She's sleeping. So we had a duty. We had to do, as police officers, we had to do what we had to do. So we took the young lady home. To come to find out, mom was home. She was home in bed when we found her. We knocked on the door prior to coming in. Nobody came to that door. So we're like, let's go inside and see where mom is. Mom was laying in bed with a crack pipe right next to her bed, completely passed out. Unfortunately, those are some of the things our youth go through. And that just showed me the compassion that I needed to have towards the public as my role as a police officer. Not only focus on, hey, let me go and put handcuffs on this person because they did this, or let me go put handcuffs on this person because they did that. But take the time, take the patience, take the initiative, be compassionate to take a minute and learn why is it that people are doing what they're doing. So I think compassion is one of my strongest suits. As far as my professional, is that what was the professional?
Your strongest personal asset.
Yeah, but then your
And your
professional
professional
accomplishment, your biggest
Professional
professional accomplishment.
Yeah. I'm not big on titles. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm sitting here interviewing for the job of a lieutenant, and the fact that I'm continuing to grow and progress in the police department. But I think it's even more important to me, the reputation that I've acquired in the law enforcement community and in the city of Holyoke. When I worked in the Detective Bureau in domestic violence, I was part of it was a task force created which encompassed DCF, District Attorney's Office, several police departments, the courts, and we collaborated together to fix the problem, or at least address the problem of domestic violence. Once we finished and I got promoted and I was sent off that role, the people actually brought a cake in to wish me a good luck in my next journey in my career and sent me off on my way. My reputation with the community, I am known on the street as Colombia because that's where I came from. People in the city, they learn who the police officers are the same way we learn who they are. They know that I'm stern, but they know that I'm fair towards them. I have no issues out in public. I have the respect of the public. I have the respect of, I think, my coworkers. I have the respect of the courts, district attorney's office. So I think my 20 years, my name has been synonymous with hard work, professional. So I think my biggest accomplishment is the person that I have become, and continue to be towards this law enforcement career and profession.
Okay. So I know you're a detective and did your homework. I'm sure you realize we missed a question there. So I'm going to go backwards.
Yeah,
I'm going to go backwards one.
I gotcha.
You have witnessed an officer behaving in an unethical manner. How would you handle that situation?
I thought you skipped that on purpose. No, that's actually a very easy question, I would say. As law enforcement officers, as police officers, we are held to a higher standard than the public. We realize that, we know that, and it's incumbent upon us to not betray that trust that the public has put on us. So when it comes to ethics, it's a very cut and dry. Listen, don't do this. It's not good for you. It's not good for the department. It's not good for the profession. With that being said, we need to take the time to review each incident thoroughly, because it is a huge accusation that can be made towards somebody. So get all the sides of the story, do all your research, look at all the possible angles, explore explanations or whatever. Once you have all the facts, then you do what you have to do, whether it be progressive discipline, all the way up to whatever it may be, even termination if necessary. So I think ethics is a huge part of policing, but in all honesty, it's almost like a ground ball. It's very basic. Behave professionally and maintain the trust of the public.
The last question I have here is probably the most difficult question.
Do you have any other questions?
Do you have any other questions? Come on, you.
I don't have any other questions, but I just want, again, like I said at the beginning, thank you for this process. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to showcase the positive that the Holyoke Police Department has to offer. Thank you for your support that you've shown thus far, not only towards the police, but towards the city of Holyoke. I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I want to thank you for your interview that you had with Univision. Univision captain is one of the biggest Latino TV stations.
Yep.
And Mayor Garcia had the opportunity. I saw it. Look at him; he's shy. To participate in this interview. But the big takeaway that I took from there was that you put the name of Holyoke on a national spotlight in a very positive way, and we want to thank you for that. And with that being said, as I mentioned before, I would ask personally that you continue that support towards the city and towards our police department. You have a strong voice in our community, in the Latino community. Use that voice, please, to impact the rest of the community, to get them to understand how good the police department really is, and not to see us in the negative light that we're currently being viewed as. Because at the end of the day, we're just persons like everybody else, and I think people need to know that we're human beings, just the way that they are.
Sarge, with that, just know that this community raised me.
You and I both.
Members of that police department raised me. Members in the streets of Holyoke raised me. Community organizations and different, so I have that unique perspective at all angles, and all I want to do is just maintain a balance, bring our folks together, connect, so that we can raise the next generation and continue to build the city and grow it in a positive direction. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything. This was great. Very good answers, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Chief,
Thank you,
thank you.
George.
Thank you so much. Ms. Curran, thank you.
Thank you, George.
I'll just shut this off for now, or do you want me to leave it on?
Leave it on in case the next person forgets to change.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much.
Next.
Would you like me to
I didn't even read his thing.
Oh, jeez, Chief, I thought you were gonna.
Are we going there?
Yeah,
Just one more piece.
just one piece.
Thank you, because there was one thing that I did forget, which I'm very proud of, but maybe the chief will touch up on.
I might. Just real quickly, George's employment history, as he discussed, he started with us as a dispatcher in 2001, police officer in 2002. I know he's proud of his time in the DB and all his patrol time, including all 3 shifts, where he currently is a sergeant on the day shift, and he does handle our training for our specials. He also had 1 letter of commendation, a letter of proclamation, a proclamation from the mayor. Which mayor was that?
So that was Mayor Moore's. That was the
Okay.
one thing that I was very proud of.
Yep,
I
I
forgot
just
about.
saw that, and 5 letters of appreciation. He also, he didn't talk too much, I know he touched on it, but he has a bachelor's degree.
Oh.
And he also,
Westfield State?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my
Westfield State, I know he'd like that.
Yeah.
We got a
And then, and then he also has done 4 years, and I know this personally too, as having sit in there, as George is one of our instructors in our in-service for human trafficking.
Yeah, that proclamation from Mayor Moore's, myself and Danny, if you remember, you were there as the first Colombian members of the Holyoke Police Department, which is a huge accomplishment, and it was great to receive it.
Yeah, and every year the Colombians do a flag raising for Colombian Independence Day, and I remember you were
Yeah.
recognized in the Colombian community for, were you the first one? The first
So
one?
I was the very first one. I was.
For the police department, I mean.
Correct, I was. I was the very first one. Danny came right after me, and then we had another officer, Officer Chattel, who also came. So we've had a couple in our city. But yeah, it was a great honor to recognize, my culture and
That's
where I
it.
come from.
Awesome stuff, man. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, George.
Would you like me to call?
Yeah, have Jeff come in.
Don't forget
We're
the
getting
other
a
one.
little behind, not too bad.
You
Well,
got the
but-
another blank one.
oh yeah, right here. Yeah, we're running a little behind, just, so you know.
Are we?
Just long. Jeff, come on in. Sergeant Jeff Ortiz. That's fine, Jeff. That's fine. Come on in and have a seat at the front desk there.
Hey, Sergeant, how we doing?
All right, yourself?
Not too bad. I do the same spiel, probably not anything you already haven't heard if you've been observing these interviews, but what we've been trying to do here is something obviously very different and non-traditional when it comes to promoting and hiring new candidates into the police department. Although non-traditional in the police department, very traditional in fire, since the fire commission is a appointed civilian board and they have the oversight authority, so all their meetings or interviews are done in a public venue. So I'm trying to replicate that in a sense that I recognize that I am the appointing authority in the police department, but here we're trying to really curb the perception and build public trust in our community, and thought that maybe having such a process like this helps with that in our effort to, again, curb that perception of whatever the distrust might be or the discussions might be out in the community. And also the people at home who are watching and streamlining and, can get to know who the officers are that are coming to the police department and who those officers are that are on the watch, being promoted into these supervisor positions. And you get to be observed by your peers, who I'm sure are all at the station watching this right now, so no pressure. What we're gonna do is just ask you a series of questions here. We'll rate them accordingly. The rating has no impact really on the order of which you are on that list, as you already know that the civil service takes precedent. The rating, although it helps with dialogue, but also if you were tie, like let's say you were tie with another number 1 or number 2, then that's where this might really help break that tie. But in this case, there is no tie. However, for discussion purposes, it really helps for us through this process to get to know you a little better. But before we dive right into this, any questions at all on any of that?
Negative.
Feeling very comfortable? So the first question here is, tell us about yourself. What are your long-term career goals, and why are you interested in the promotion at the Holyoke Police Department?
Jeff Ortiz is the name. Born and raised here in Holyoke. Third son to two amazing parents. My mother did what she could for us, and I think I turned out pretty all right because of everything she did. My dad, supporting role, did just as much as she did, even considering their shortcomings. So nothing special. Typical childhood, ride my bike up and down these streets like most people. The biggest event in my life didn't come till 17 when I joined the military, the Army, the best branch, which right now I'm on year 20 of 2 deployments overseas with them, and currently right now stationed at Bay State Medical Center on a stateside deployment, helping out there for the foreseeable future. Within that time in the military was when a sergeant of mine while in Iraq steered me in this direction. I wasn't the typical kid that wanted to follow in someone else's footsteps and be a police officer. I didn't have that. I didn't know anyone that was a police officer. I just, while doing my job out there overseas, a sergeant, pretty high-ranking guy, just on a whim, asked me to take the civil service exam. It was actually for the fire department. I said no. He signed me up anyway. And then I looked more into it, saw the police one was also available. So I was like, okay. And it just kind of domino effect. And here I am now talking about that, which was, Jesus, like 15 years ago. So that was my path to here and now. It's worked out, no complaints. It's been about 12 years now. So that's the background. Why do I want to be a lieutenant at HPD? I would say, why would I not want to be a lieutenant at HPD? When you see that there's room for improvement, that you can grab the brass ring, why not reach up? If you see things that can be done better, why not you be the one to make them better? And that's how I've perceived it here. I'm not trying to knock what we have now, but there's always room for improvement. I've been under the command of great leaders and not so great leaders. So I pick and choose, I take tools from my toolbox, and I know, because I'm a motivated individual, you know, what I need to do, how to make things better, and I want to be the one to make things better, if I can. Was there a third part to that?
No, that was it. Long-term career goals, why interested in promotion at the police department? Those were the two.
Well, the long term I didn't really cover.
Oh,
But
okay.
my only goal is to help. That's it. If I can, like I said, make it better, you know, in the position of a lieutenant, preferably to stay on nights as the night shift lieutenant, because nights is my bread and butter. But as a lieutenant, if I had to pick another spot, I'd like to knock Lieutenant Reyes out of his and take what he's doing right now, because he's the guy bringing in new people, and I want to make sure we have new, good people that can be molded properly, and I want to be at the forefront of that.
Bringing new people to
To the department, new hires, stuff like that. You know, I know he's the big wheel when it comes to a lot of that stuff.
Kelly, you're up.
Thanks. Can you share with us why you believe you would be a good lieutenant?
Well, again, why not me? And I say that because To take the exam after you're a sergeant, it's 1 year's time. So I check that box. So anyone that checks that box can reach for that ring. So I did just the same. So if I was to get it, I think I'd be good at it, primarily because I care about most of the things I see around me, and I care about making those things better, which is kind of echoing off of my last answer, because that's my biggest thing. Like, I want to be that guy that makes the difference, as cheesy as that sounds. I want to be that guy that if there's no answer for why something's being done, I want to get that answer, share that answer so things make sense, so we can go about either improving it, or if it makes sense in some way after I receive that answer, we can leave it the same. It all depends. But from my time in the Army and knowing what a military lieutenant does, I would bring that in, knowing that my mission more so than not would be to take direction not only from the captain and work with him and then come up with strategic plans that I would then disseminate to my sergeants, and then they would then, act out by pushing it down to the patrol guys. I would also want to be a team player in the mix with those guys, not just barking out orders. There's a time and place, but I, as the lieutenant, cog in the wheel, just want to do my part. And I think it'd be great if it was me, just because I kind of know the job already.
Okay. Tell me what you believe is the most important trait or characteristic of a good supervisor, and why.
There is no best trait. It's a gelling of multiple traits that make a good leader. Because there could be all sorts of different leaders that each one does not have that certain trait, but they're still a good leader. So they could all be missing something, but they're still a great leader in and of themselves. So there's no great, but you should still, for me, it's, in my mind, one team, one fight soldier first, because I have a more military mentality. So for me, it'd be taking care of my guys first and foremost. That's how I look at it.
My turn? Yeah, my turn. In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges facing the Holyoke Police Department, and how do you think you can help with making it better?
Well, certainly at the top of the list would be money. It always is. It prohibits us from doing a lot. I believe strongly in training, as much of it as often as possible, because this 1 week thing we got going on here, in my eyes, is never. It just doesn't cut it. The weekly in-service throughout, one time a year. I think we need to somehow, some way, whatever it may be, whether it be working with other agencies or utilizing something that they have, like Springfield's like new shooting range, like we need to be able to train and train often. And not just tactics, but the other half of it, getting along with the community and stuff like that. That's our biggest thing, my opinion. That's it.
Kelly, yep.
All right. How do you think other officers at the Holyoke Police Department would describe you?
I don't know if I can say those words. No, seriously. I would hope it'd be as a team player, because, again, I'm all about helping my guys. I'm not now in my current position as a sergeant, one of those to watch from afar. I'm in the mix. If one of my guys needs something, I'm there. I tell them to call me. I what's the word I'm looking for here? I implore them to, like, hey guys, go out there, get it. If you have a question, come and get me. If something is going on, I will be there. The second that radio comes on and they're telling dispatch where they're at, I'm on my way. I don't need to wait, and I'm not going there to be a snoopervisor. I'm there as an extra set of hands and an extra brain so we could come to the best conclusion together. I don't stay waiting for it to be over and then just say, you guys all right? And drive off. Like, even if they don't need me per se, I'll still be there and they know I have their back.
Can you give me an example of dealing with a difficult situation and how you handled it?
So in the 12 years I've been here, I've been super fortunate, absolutely the luckiest, not to have anything come across my plate that I've had to take home and play over in my head over and over. Because of my military commitments, monthly, yearly, I'm often away. And usually when I come back, I'm being told, you missed this, you missed that. And, you know, as much as I would have loved to have been there to help in the moment, I'm fortunate not to have been, because now it's not weighing on, you know, my mind, my conscience. But although I've never taken anything home, there was 2 moments that deeply saddened me, if you will. One was female. We tried to help, speak with her, and unfortunately she took her own life, literally this far away from my own head. She was on the other side of the wall when the shot was fired, and then she was gone. And if I could have put my hands through the wall to do something about it, I would have, but I couldn't. So that one bothered, but it wasn't like any type of crisis that I suffered, like thinking about it. It was just extremely sad. And the other was when female goes into premature labor, and while en route to the hospital, I was driving the ambulance for them because they both needed to give, the EMTs needed to give their full attention to her. The child was born, and she says, why is my baby not crying? The baby didn't make it. And that one hurt. That one hurt. We got to the hospital. I was brought back to the station, but I know there was no chance baby made it.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Sergeant. Everyone makes mistakes. How do you generally handle things when, upon reflection, when something is pointed out to you, you realize you presented incorrect information or did not handle yourself as effectively as you could have?
You just own it. If you mess up and you're told, you own it. Have that conversation with whoever is presenting this new evidence to you, and you either correct whatever is incorrect, issue the apology, thank the person for bringing it to your attention, then you just drive on.
Is this where we skipped the last question, or am I next?
You're
With
next.
what would you consider?
You're on number
Okay.
8.
You're number 8.
You're up.
Okay. Cool. So what would you consider to be your strongest personal asset? Also, can you please share with us what has been your biggest professional accomplishment?
Is that your number 8, Kelly?
At least we're staying consistent.
That's, I messaged you that I think the electronic copy that I have is different than the paper copy.
I see. All right, that's fine. Did you get the question?
Can I hear that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 2-part question. What would you consider to be your strongest personal asset? Also, please share with us what has been your biggest professional accomplishment.
I think my biggest asset is just, again, that I care and I'm willing to help anyone and everyone in any situation. I often stay late to help others on reports. I think I'm one of the only guys that does that. If I was there and, you know, my guy, even if they tell me they're fine, hey, Sarge, I got it. I'm like, no, we'll hang out. I'll check it 2-3 hours after shift. I don't even put in any time for it. I just hang out, make sure they're good, give them good advice, and then we finish it together, and then we go home. One more time with the second part.
Share
No
with
problem.
us
Biggest professional accomplishment.
biggest professional accomplishment.
Just wearing the uniform. My father had a lot of legal troubles. My oldest brother, my youngest brother. Growing up in Jackson Parkway, I never foresaw myself, you know, proudly displaying a badge on my chest. But I put the uniform on, and just that moment there, that first moment that I had the actual uniform, that I went from the khakis in police academy to actually wearing the real thing, I would say so far has been the coolest. And I've saved a few lives and been awarded for that. But that moment right there, when I first looked in the mirror, just as awesome as the first time I saw myself in my military uniform. Those will always stand out. But if there's anything else, then I have not good memory because I don't remember it. So I'm going to go with that.
Okay. Okay, you've witnessed an officer behaving in an unethical manner. How do you handle that situation?
Just as I have before, if it's emergent, you stop it in its tracks, and then you have that conversation. You take that person aside. If you stopped it before it became something, you let them know why you stopped it, why he cannot do that, he or she cannot do that, how it's not worth it, you know? Don't let that singular moment right there ruin everything you've worked for and bring troubles back to home if you lose your job. If it's something bigger than that, then we're just going to have to keep escalating up the ladder. Go off of whatever the book, whatever the note, whatever it may be that we have that says how to handle it. Once the conversation's had, it's like, hey, give me your side. Okay, this is what I got. All right. This is what is being said that needs to happen. And this is what we're going to do.
Sarge, is there anything that we didn't go over you might want to share with us at this time, or any questions for us on anything?
Nothing that we didn't go over, nothing that I want to ask, but there's one guy that if the city of Holyoke needs as a sergeant, that's Dustin Summers. It would be a great disservice to this city if that guy doesn't wear rank someday. He's on the list. He'll probably get there, but I just had to say that.
There's a,
It's coming up. He'll be- he's
Next week.
interviewing.
oh, you're like, you're,
He's plugging for
oh,
a
oh.
junior guy to become a
Oh, nice. Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you so much, and good luck. Thanks for the stories you shared with us, and good luck with the process, man.
Appreciate the time here. No rush. I like my sergeant time. I like my sergeant time.
Thank you, man.
Jeff, you can send in Officer Dunn. Here we go.
Everyone have a good day?
Oh,
All we can do is thank.
my seat.
Jeremy, just 2 seconds. I'm just gonna, for the panel that's here, and for Kelly at home, our last candidate kind of took off before I had a chance to read his personal accomplishments. So just so we all have it, Jeff, as you mentioned, was employed as of 2010. He spent pretty much his entire career on the midnight day shift in patrol until he was promoted in 2021. In his current assignment as a sergeant on midnight day. He has 2 certificates of commendation and 1 of appreciation, and he's also a certified legal updates instructor. Oh. My mic was off. Sorry about that. I'll go over it one more time. Jeff was with us since 2010 when he was hired as a police officer. 11 years on midnight to 8 until he was promoted in 2021. His current assignment as a sergeant on midnight to 8. And he has 2 certificates of commendation, 1 certificate of appreciation. He is also a certified legal updates instructor.
I think we should start with this first,
So I don't forget it?
so we don't forget it. I think that fixed the problem, because we've been pretty consistent on.
Yeah, we've been doing good except for that, so. Okay,
I have a resume on.
and we're just gonna start, what's that?
I have a
Yeah, bring
resume
them on
for
up.
you guys, if that's okay.
I guess before we jump in, I'll do the intro thing.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So we're going to Lieutenant?
Sergeant. Officer Dunn is applying for sergeant position.
How we doing, Sergeant? Or
Good, how are you?
Officer?
Officer.
Hopefully, Sergeant.
Hopefully, that's a goal.
Hey, I'll just do a short intro here, opening statement. Obviously, what we're witnessing with these interviews in public certainly has been a non-traditional approach of the city's ever seen, although not unique to the police department. It's actually a practice that happens in the fire department with a 3-member civilian board that oversees the promotions and the hiring of new recruits into the department, where meetings are done because of open meeting law in the public. So I thought that perhaps this would be a good idea to do at the police department. There's no open meeting law because I am the appointing authority, but nevertheless, what a good opportunity to share with the public who the candidates are we're interviewing and promoting that are on the watch, looking out for the city and its residents. So we have here just a series of questions we're going to ask you. We're rating them accordingly. The rating, as you know, civil service takes precedent in the order of that list. How we rate you doesn't necessarily, or at all actually, determine if we're going to bypass a candidate. It's just for discussion purposes. But if there was a situation where the candidates were tied with another candidate on the civil service list, then at that point, this really takes an effect on how we rate candidates. But just so you know, when we're writing things down, that's what we're doing here on this side of the table. Before we dive right in, do you have any questions for us?
No, not yet.
All right. The chief is going to start off first by just going over a little bit of the summary of your career here in Holyoke and other things
Correct.
of your accomplishments and so forth.
Okay.
It's a quick employment summary. Jamie's been with us since 2002 when he was appointed as a reserve officer full-time in 2004. The bulk of that time was spent in patrol on the 4 to 12, and he is currently assigned to the records division on the 4 to 12. He has 1 letter of commendation, 2 certificates of appreciation, and he is also a certified in-service instructor.
James, beyond that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your long-term career goals, and why you're interested in the promotion at the Holyoke Police Department?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Holyoke, Massachusetts. I went to Blessed Sacrament School, then to Holyoke Catholic, where I graduated.
Bless you.
Oh, bless you. After Holyoke Catholic, I went away to school to St. Anselm College, stayed there for a year, and I kind of found out that wasn't for me. So I came back home kind of lacked a little direction at that time. I started working some jobs that wasn't where I wanted to be. I was kind of floating through. So I decided I wanted to go back to school. So I enrolled at the Hoyok Community College. I started taking criminal justice classes there. And while I was there doing that, I got the opportunity to become a seasonal correctional officer at the Hamden County Jail and House of Corrections, which is like a supplemental. You're basically a corrections officer working.
Summer help?
Summer help.
I did summer help.
Well, that's what I did. I did that for 3 years. I ended up staying on through the winter. I forget if it was once or twice. And while I was doing that, I took the civil service test, got a great score, and ended up getting hired in 2002. I worked as a reserve for about 2 years. I don't know exactly, but pretty close to that. 2004, like the chief said, went to the full-time academy. Since then, I've been assigned to the 4 to midnight shift the whole time. During my time, I was in patrol for most of it until recently. And during my time there, like the chief said, I've been an in-service instructor. I was on the ERT team, I think. I got appointed to that in 2008 until it finished. And I think that's it for like the training stuff. Recently, I've been in the records division. I'm that smiling face you see when you walk in the front door of the police department. You get to talk to me. And in the last month or so, I've been helping out the detective bureau, kind of like working a few cases here and there, I think to take the load off of some of those guys because they're short up there. And what was the second part of that question?
It was long-term career goals.
My long-term
and just
career
why
goals.
interested in the promotion.
Yeah, the long-term career goals, I think, based on the time I have left and the people that are above me, I'd like to maybe finish out my career here as a captain. I think that that's feasible. I think if I, do my part, I could certainly make lieutenant, but it kind of depends on a lot of things that are out of my control. But I would absolutely see myself moving up the ranks farther too. I would like to be a captain.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great. So can you share with us why you believe you'll be a good, is it sergeant?
Sergeant,
Is that what
yes.
he's,
Yes, Sergeant.
Yep.
thank you.
I think I would be a good sergeant because one thing I bring to the table is a wealth of experience. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I've responded to thousands of calls. I've taken hundreds and hundreds of reports. I've investigated hundreds of accidents. I've testified in court a few hundred times. I have, a tremendous amount of experience, also being an in-service instructor and things like that. One of the big jobs that you do as a sergeant is when patrolmen get into a difficult situation, they call you because they don't know what to do or they don't know how to handle a situation. And I think that experience would, pay dividends there, and be able to guide them through some of those calls.
Okay, tell me what you believe is the most important trait or characteristic of a good supervisor and why.
I think the most important trait for a sergeant or a supervisor is to be a good mentor or a good coach. I think, one of the things that's a very important job is, guiding people through their career, helping them, along the way, seeing, what they need and maybe help them point their way through their career, whether they want to become a detective or, take the supervisor's test and become promoted. I think, helping people fulfill their potential as police officers.
In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges facing the Holyoke Police Department? How do you think you can help with making it better?
Well, I think one of the biggest, challenges facing the Holyoke Police Department and police departments across the nation is police community relations. I think there's obviously been several high-profile incidents, every year that have really strained police, community relations. I think that's something that we need to work on. I think that maybe we can make changes by just our day-to-day contact with citizens. Every time you deal with someone, you try to make it positive, and that can't always be positive. sometimes our job by nature is we have to arrest people, we have to write people tickets, like we have to do some things that are antagonistic. It's part of the job. But I think that the way you go about it and the way you handle yourself, you could still leave someone with a positive experience. I know personally, something that I do is my children go to school in the city of Holyoke, and when I can, whenever there's like an after-school program or something like that, I always try my best to go there and mingle and speak with the kids and see the parents, even if it's for 5 minutes or 10 minutes because I'm busy. I'm almost always able to do that because you can make impressions, especially on kids. It just seems like it's great for building community relations.
Very good.
How would you think other officers at the Holyoke Police Department would describe you?
I think other people at the Holyoke Police Department, my peers, would describe me as knowledgeable and dependable. Like I, kind of touched on before, I bring a wealth of experience, and people at the police department know that. People are always coming up to me, asking me questions, asking me my opinion, asking me to read their reports and go over it. And I think it's because they respect me and they respect my opinion. Oh, I'm sorry, that's second one. Dependable. I think when I was working the street, I always answered my calls. I always backed people up. I was always there. I didn't shirk my duties. I wasn't parking in a corner somewhere. I was always there to do my thing and to help my fellow officers.
Okay. Can you give us an example of dealing with a difficult situation and how you handled it?
Sure. A difficult situation that comes to mind is actually the last time I took the promotional exam. I got a good score in the exam, and they were making promotions. They promoted a few people in front of me, and I was the last person on the list to be promoted. There was no one behind me who had passed the test, so I was kind of like the last person there. And there was a spot available. A sergeant retired, and they ended up not promoting me, and I was like incredibly disheartened by this. Like, I'm sure the chief has told you, but like when you're studying for this promotional exam, you're responsible for the knowledge of 4 college textbooks that you basically have to teach yourself, and anything in mass criminal law and criminal procedure. It's a vast quantity of information. You have to be like intimately familiar with it because they can ask you anything within that realm. So you really, to do your due diligence, you have to put a lot of time in. And, I was very dejected by that. So this time, I redoubled my efforts. I put in my time, sacrificing time with my family and my friends. And this time I ended up getting the top score of the whole police department, which, hard work pays off.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. Everyone makes mistakes. How do you generally handle things when, upon reflection or when something is pointed out to you, you realize you presented incorrect information or did not handle yourself as effectively as you could have?
Well, I think if you make a mistake, you apologize, you deal with the consequences of your behavior, whatever happened, and then you move on. But I think that you have to try to take everything and make it a learning experience. You make a mistake, hopefully you won't do it again, and you've learned something, and maybe you can even pass that knowledge on to someone else.
What would you consider to be your strongest personal asset? Also, please share with us what has been your biggest professional accomplishment.
I think my strongest personal asset is I like to think of myself as a lifelong learner, whether that be inside of work or outside of work. I'm always trying to improve myself, whether that's like, learning things around the house or, trainings at work or whatever it is. I think it's important not to stay stagnant. I think it's important to improve yourself and move forward. And the second part, my biggest accomplishment, is that what it was? My biggest professional accomplishment was, I don't remember the date. It was a few years ago. I was in car 4, which is a car that covers the Highlands. And there was a call for a fire in Fairfield Avenue. I was very close. When the call came out, I was probably 2 blocks away. And when I got there, this old house was fully engulfed in flames. I pulled up, and there was people in front saying, hey, there's people trapped in the back. There was basically their family members is who it was. So I ran down back to the side of the house, and there were 2 people trapped on like in a second floor porch, and there was no egress for them. There was like smoke pouring out of there, and they were trapped, and the fire department wasn't there yet because I had just been so close. And I saw a neighbor literally at the house next door. There was a ladder on the side of his house. I said, hey, grab that ladder. We grabbed the ladder, we threw it up there, and we ended up rescuing those 2 people
Oh, wow.
before the fire department got up there. It was kind of a lucky thing, but it's nice to be able to do something like that to save people's lives.
Okay. Hypothetically, you have witnessed an officer behaving in an unethical manner. How do you handle that situation?
Whatever it is, I would immediately deal with it, fix the situation right then, whatever that may be. And then later on, behind closed doors, I would address that officer, I would deal with it. And, depending on the severity of it, if, there's not a situation you're thinking of, if it's something less serious, maybe I could just speak with that officer and let them know. Or if not, it might be time to put pen to paper and start progressive discipline. It depends on the situation.
Is there anything anything else you want to share with us we didn't go over? You think it's worth including in this process?
I don't think
Or
so.
any questions?
I'm sorry?
Or any questions?
No, at this time, I don't have any questions. I just appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you guys. Thank you.
This is great. I want to thank you so much for obviously the years of service and for your diligence and hard work and trying to make it this far, now number 1 on the list. I wish you luck, and we'll certainly stay in touch.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can send them pretty much right in here. Let me get the last. Joseph Zurheide.
All right. Mr. Dunn.
Hey, Joe.
How we doing?
Zurheide. This is Officer Joe Zurheide, and he is going for sergeant as well.
You. Officer Zurheide, how you doing?
Good. Yourself, sir? Mayor?
Not bad at all. Before we dive right in, I just have this spiel that I give for every candidate. As you know and can see, this is a very non-traditional approach we're taking public interviews. Although non-traditional for the police department, it's actually a model that I'm replicating from the fire department. The Board of Fire Commissioners over there, a 3-member civilian board, have the appointing authority of all their officers. And so all their interviews and promotions are done in public meetings. I am the appointing authority for the police department. That's why we've never seen it done in public meetings, because there's no open meeting law or anything we have to follow. But it's a good practice, a good way to build a stronger connection with the community. Community gets to see, and learn from those candidates that are being promoted into these important leadership roles and taking care of the watch for the citizens of the city. And to help curb public perception too, and de-escalate any potential for, what might be perceived as nepotism or whatever the case. As you already know, civil service list takes precedent. We follow the order of that list unless there's a clear reason why we can bypass a candidate. What we're doing on our end, we're gonna, well, the chief is gonna start off with just a short summary. We're gonna interview you, rate your answers. The rating doesn't determine any reason why to bypass. There's no real right or wrong answer, but instead it helps us as a conversation piece to kind of, discuss, how candidates interviewed and whatnot. Unless there was a tie, if you were number one or number three or tie number three with somebody else, at that point, this is a good tool to use to break the tie, but it's not certain. It's not the situation here. Before we dive in, you have any questions as far as the process is concerned?
No, I appreciate that overview, though. Thank you.
You got it. Chief, you want to start off
Okay.
with?
Absolutely. Officer Zurheide has been with us since 2013. He was appointed as a reserve officer. 2014, he was appointed full-time and has served in patrol and to his current assignment where he's assigned in the Criminal Investigations Bureau. I know he's also a member of one of the task forces. He has one commendation and 4 letters of appreciation. He is also a legal updates in service instructor, and he's also an armorer, completed an armorer school.
The first question I have here, tell me about yourself. What are your long-term career goals, and why are you interested in the promotion at the Holyoke Police Department?
Absolutely. So, hello, my name is Joseph Zurheide. I'm currently assigned to the Detective Bureau in the Holyoke Police Department. I was born and raised in the city of Holyoke. I went to Holyoke Public Schools. After graduating from Holyoke High School, I enlisted into the military, where I spent 4 years on active duty. After coming out of the military, I came back to the city of Holyoke. I started my college education at Holyoke Community College. During that time in 2013, I was hired by the Holyoke Police Department. That's when I began my career with them. During that time, when I first got on, I was assigned to the 4 to 12 shift in patrol. In 2017, I was transferred into the Detective Bureau, where I worked for the Criminal Investigation Bureau. And during that time, since 2017, I've investigated multiple crimes from shoplifting all the way up to homicides and pretty much everything in between. From there, I've also been assigned to the Hampden County District Attorney's Office Task Force, where we've done joint investigations with them targeting high-level prolific offenders. I've been a legal updates instructor, and I've also instructed in the special topics in our in-service training. I've filled in various other roles in the police department, helping out where I could. During that time with the police department, I also went into the United States Air Force Reserves out of Chicopee, and I did that for a few years as well, simultaneously. So that's kind of my brief overview of my time at the Holyoke Police Department.
We have with us, I'm sorry, she's with us virtually. Kelly Curran is our new personnel director for the city, and she's also asking the questions too. So go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, yes. I'm not going to move on to the next question yet because you didn't say your long-term career goal
Okay.
for the first question.
I apologize. My long-term career goals at the Holyoke Police Department are, I feel like sergeant is my next natural kind of progression. I've worked in patrol, I've worked in the Detective Bureau, I've filled out in other various roles in the police department. So I feel like the next step for my career goal or career growth would be becoming a sergeant and really learning that position before looking to the future. But ultimately, I would like to see as how far I could go up in the Holyoke Police Department.
Great, thank you. Can you share with us why you believe you'll be a good sergeant?
Yes, I feel like I would be a good sergeant for the Holyoke Police Department because I'm honest, I'm fair. I try to view every situation we go to from all points of view. I think it's important to try to look at it from different perspectives while you're there. And I believe over the last 9 years, I've really gained the trust and respect from not only my colleagues, but also the general public that I deal with on a daily basis.
Okay, can you tell me what you believe is the most important trait or characteristic of a good supervisor and why?
Yes, I could. I think the most important trait for a supervisor or anyone in law enforcement is honesty. From the day you're hired to the day you retire, and everything you do in between, from going to an initial call, speaking with witnesses, interviewing suspects, writing reports, or testifying in court, it's all predicated on you being honest. So I feel like that is the biggest quality of any supervisor that they can have.
Good.
In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges facing the Holyoke Police Department? How do you think you can help with making it better?
I feel like this is a kind of a twofold question. The biggest challenges we're facing right now are manning, staffing levels, and perception of the police department. And I don't think that's just the Holyoke Police Department. I think that's police departments throughout the country. There's police officers that work every day throughout the country that do great things, helping people, saving lives, responding to incidences. But there are a few instances throughout the year, the past couple of years, that have been negative. And unfortunately, those incidents do get the most media coverage, and they not only hurt the perception of that officer that was involved or that police department, but it hurts the perception of law enforcement and how all police officers are throughout the country. And I think that negative perception that's been kind of portrayed lately in the media and everywhere else has really hurt our staffing levels and our recruitment levels of trying to get the best candidates onto the job. And the way I would continue to try to counteract that is continuing just to be a good person, a good police officer, a good supervisor, and just building those community relationships. Every time you build one of those bridges in the community, it's only going to help us out in the long run.
Great. How do you think other officers at the Holyoke Police Department would describe you?
I would hope my other police officers would describe me as being fair, honest, approachable, someone that they can come to when they have a question, and also easy to work with. I try to treat everyone with respect, and I hope that anyone can feel that anyone that I work with or the general public would feel comfortable coming to me with any question.
Can you give an example of dealing with a difficult situation and how you handled it?
Yes. Like I've said previously, I've investigated many crimes. I think one of the hardest ones for me, difficulty-wise, is dealing with crimes that involve children. I'm a new father myself, so those ones kind of hit closer to home. Not too long ago, there was a detective out east that called me one day while I was at work and said an ex-spouse had abducted a child in his city out east, and he believed that they were in Holyoke at an address. So he gave me the address. I went there. I found the car that they were using, and I spoke with the resident at the house. After gaining her trust and talking for a while, she allowed me into the house to make sure that she said the child and the spouse were in New Jersey. They were there, but they had for the last couple of days, but they had left and were in Jersey now. But she allowed me into her home after talking to her for a while. I confirmed that they weren't there, and we let the New Jersey authorities know. But I felt like she knew a little more than what she was kind of letting on, and not sure why she was kind of holding back, but maybe she was afraid. It is intimidating when you have somebody knocking on your door asking about this kind of situation. So I stayed there. We were there for hours. I talked to her. I let her talk to me. I asked her questions. She asked me questions. And we just built that trust in that relationship where after a few hours, she did tell me exactly the address that the child and spouse were dropped off at. And within about 20 minutes of calling New Jersey and letting them know, that suspect was coming out of the house with the child, and they were on their way to the next hiding location, and they were able to safely take custody of that child and get it back to its mother.
Wow.
So I think that was very difficult just because I'm a new father, and knowing that there's a child that was abducted, and just being able to sit there and talk to somebody is what was needed, and trying to get that information, but you had to build that rapport and trust, and that's what led to a good outcome, thankfully.
Everyone makes mistakes. How do you generally handle things when, upon reflection, or when something is pointed out to you, you realize you presented incorrect information or did not handle yourself as effectively as you could have?
I think right off the bat, you have to own it. You have to own it, and it's not so much that you made a mistake, because we all make mistakes. Nobody's infallible. You have to realize, you have to own it, admit that you did it, but the important part of that mistake is, what can you learn from it? Use it as a training and a stepping stone to make yourself better. And if you can utilize that to make yourself better and those around you better, then it's a positive outcome.
What would you consider to be your strongest personal asset? Also, please share with us what has been your biggest professional accomplishment.
Absolutely. I think one of my strongest assets is that I'm willing to work as a team. I'm willing to listen to any point of view, anyone willing to take ideas from, regardless what your status is or what your rank is. I want to hear your options, and we can try to come up with the best plan and work from there. But also, as a sergeant in the police department, there's times where you need to be able to make a decision. You might not be able to have that time to sit down and have the discussion, and I feel like if put in that situation, I can make a decision on the spot, but I also want to hear from people when the time is available. One of my biggest professional accomplishments, what I think would be a recent investigation I was part of with the district attorney's task force, where we targeted a violent street gang that was known for narcotics trafficking and shootings and other violent crimes. And when that investigation concluded, there was a total of 15 arrests. We recovered 20 illegal firearms, 100,000 bags of heroin, just under 3 kilograms of cocaine, and $70,000 in cash. And 2 of the people in that investigation were subsequently charged with a shooting here in Holyoke, and 4 of them were charged with murder-related offenses out of Springfield. So I believe that was, in sheer size, that was probably the biggest investigation of my time on the police department.
Okay, hypothetically, you've witnessed an officer behaving in an unethical manner. How do you handle that situation?
I believe if the unethical manner arose to a safety issue, you or anyone else there has to put a stop to it immediately. Whether it's the safety of that officer or the safety of the public, you have to step in and put a stop to it right there. Now, if it doesn't raise to that level or rise to that level, then you should notify the commanding officer of the shift. You should also talk to that patrolman in private, counsel him on what was unethical, kind of let him know from your point of view what happened. And you should also implement some kind of training, some remediational training to help that officer do better in the future. I would then document it and also send it up the chain of command to be properly handled from there as well.
Good answer. Do you have any question for us, or is there anything that you want to share that at this time that we could go over, or you might think we should know?
I don't. I appreciate all your time tonight. Thank you for having this process and allowing me to be part of it.
Thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Chief?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our interviews for tonight. We have one more set of interviews scheduled for next week, Wednesday, same time. And, hopefully after that, we'd be done. We'll make our appointments accordingly. And we'll be in touch. Thank you, everybody.